I'd like to call this meeting of the Johnson County Library Board of Directors to order. First, we have citizens' comments, and Sean, I think you have something to read.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two comments today, and I'll read them sequentially. So the first one is, Dear members of the Board of Directors of the Johnson County Library, I'm writing in support of the Friends of Johnson County Library plan to locate the Friends bookstore at the Lackman site. As a volunteer at the Antioch bookstore, I've seen firsthand the value of the bookstore to the community. Because the price is low and the quality high, people of all income levels shop at the store. However, for the most vulnerable, this is the only place to purchase books that are affordable. The power of libraries to improve lives in the community is evident when a teacher buys a book for her classroom library, a parent who homeschools buys essential books, a mom brings in her children to pick out a book they can own, a couple with a little free library stock up, a man buys books for the two girls who live next door and can't afford them. A woman buys books for the library at the nursing home where her mom lives. I encourage your support of Planning Meets Opportunity at Lackman. Karen Wolfcool. The second comment is, Dear Johnson County Library Board members, I'm writing to declare my support for the Friends of Johnson County Library initiative, Planning Meets Opportunity, which proposes their relocation to the now vacant and unused Lackman Library building. I feel privileged to have been a volunteer for the Friends and a support of the library for the past 8 years since moving from Chicago. The benefit that the Friends have given to the entire county through their redistribution of used library material and patron donations is an endeavor that involves all community members in a relationship with literacy and affordable book ownership that cannot be adequately measured in terms of value. What a shame it would be to lose this for lack of a plan to continue. I believe Planning Meets Opportunities offers such a plan and deserves serious consideration and ultimately your support. Thank you, Kate Catlinbach. And that concludes citizen comment.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Next, we have remarks from the Johnson County Library Board of Directors. Do any of you have anything you'd like to share?
Madam Chair, Fabian Shepard.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I had the opportunity, and I love that our library does things like this. I had the opportunity to sign in and participate in a program that was offered last month. It was called Talking to Teens About Race. And I wanted to just, if you'll indulge me just for a moment, I wanted to talk about my experience with that and my experience here in the United States having to do with race as a person who was not born here. After my father married my mother and went to Vietnam, he moved us, my brother and I, who he adopted, to the United States in case something happened to him while he was in the conflict over there. And that was my first experience with the United States. We then left the country again, and I came back at age 14 permanently to the United States of America. I came back to the South in the 70s, and so I learned a lot about racial discrimination. With respect to what was offered in this program, talking to teens about sex, or not sex, about race, you can see that I've had other things going on with my children here and some of the things that they've had to bring home. But talking to these kids about race, I can tell you that my experience here with race in the United States has probably been different from most people of color being a transplant. And I remember making a joke back in my time of entertainment that I had thought most of my life that I was Panamanian until I moved to the South in the 70s. Then I found out I was Black. What a rude awakening that was. And it's funny because it's true. However, I had a problem with the program in that the author who who was presenting the program about talking to kids about race, uh, began by claiming that this country, the United States of America, is a white supremacist country. And I think that type of statement and that position is dangerous as well as irresponsible and not an effective way to talk to children of any age or even adults about race in America. Um, and someone should probably mute there, but uh, look, I I am the one person of color on this board. I don't believe that any of you is a white supremacist. I believe all of you believe that every person uh, has the right to equal access, equal opportunity, equal rights. I think that about the neighbors that I live with, the people in my workplace. Of course, there's racism still in America. Of course, there are people who are bigots and basically have a vile way of thinking. I also believe if each of us looked exactly the same, had the same hair, eye, and skin color, people on the left side of the street would have a problem with people on the right side of the street. It's human nature. I say all of this because I believe it's very important when our library presents something like this that we be very cautious and review the material that's going to be presented and be careful about people doing things that are actually more harmful and more divisive than they are unifying. And I do believe that's what happened in this case. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Fabian. Thank you for sharing that. Does anybody have anything else they want to share?
Can I just follow up to Fabian? Let me what I'd ask is let me take a look into that, and I didn't attend the session, but I would like to talk with my admin team, and I may give you a call. I just want to make sure that there aren't. You talked about the white supremacy statement. I want to make sure that there weren't other things that concerned you. Would you be open for me reaching out to you and want to get a little bit more background on that program?
Yes, Sean, absolutely. I think that's wholly appropriate. And you know, I'm not angry with the staff. Obviously you can't vet every single detail of every program. I think things like that are triggers for people. They also they impugn people and they project a certain responsibility for the ill actions, if you will, on an entire group of people, or in this case, an entire nation of people. And I again, I will repeat, it's irresponsible and it's dangerous.
Yep. I hear what you're saying. I thank you. Thank you for saying something, and just give me a chance to look into it, and then we'll get back with you and see if there are steps that we can take that that can prevent that from happening again in the future. Thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else have anything? All right, next is board chair comments. I just have a couple things. We need to form a nominating committee for the next year beginning in May. And I've reached out with David, Brandy, and Donna, and they've agreed to be on that committee. So we need to have a slate of officers for which meeting, Sean?
You need to have a slate of officers for the second Thursday in the month of May. We need to have them nominated at the next. If we could have them nominated at the next meeting, that would be perfect in March.
So the March meeting will need the slate of officers. So the three of you can talk. If you have any questions, reach out to me or Sean. Also, the review committee that Fabian is heading up, I reached out to him and he said that he would give us a status report update from the committee in March. And Fabian, if you want to do that in April, that's fine too if you're busy. So whatever is best for you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. March it'll be fine.
Okay, Very good. We'll plan on that in March then. Okay, next is the Friends of the Library, reported by Jeannie Botkin.
Hello all. So I am the president this year. And as you can imagine, I couldn't have guessed that the pandemic would be right around the corner when I agreed to be the president this year. But, and I have to say, when the pandemic started, I was very worried because all of our revenue comes from our bookstore sales, as well as our huge book sales that we have several throughout the year. So I was very concerned about financials, obviously, as so many nonprofits are, but you know, I shouldn't have worried. Things take care of themselves. We've had excellent internet sales, and that's been amazing to see that really increase. And with the new website that we're getting fairly shortly here in the next month or two, thank you to Sean and the library's help on that, we'll be able to sell books directly to the public without them having to go through Amazon. So I think that will also help increase our revenue. But we come into 2021 with really great, solid financial reserves that I'm so thankful for. Strong sales. We have an extremely dedicated staff. I really can't tell you all enough about how dedicated our staff has been through the pandemic, and with the leadership of Shanta, that's just been amazing to watch. And Christopher, being such an invaluable liaison to the library, has been really amazing. I started on this board 4 years ago, and the relationship between especially the foundation and the Friends is sort of disjointed. And thanks to the help of Sean over the last couple of years in the reorganization, we all three, the library, the foundation, and the Friends, have just really been able to coordinate and get together so that we can really be much stronger as organizations together. And for that, I really thank Sean for kind of spearheading that change. So 2021 is looking great. We are, I was excited to hear the two comments at the beginning. We continue to work on and advocate for Lackman. We have had really great success getting a hold of some of the commissioners who called us back, including Commissioner Ashcraft, Alan Brand, Fast, Hanslick, and Commissioner O'Hara. So we've had one-on-one personal conversations and meetings with them and have had some really great feedback. So we're very excited about that possibility coming into this year. We also are looking at, since our internet sales are increasing so much, we're going to take a really hard and fast look at the expenses related to that and make sure that those are in line, see if we can't decrease those a little bit. We are also looking forward to transitioning our entire accounting and bookkeeping functions to a new vendor. So that will, I think, really be helpful and help us be more efficient in those areas. So the other just kind of final things to talk about, I'm really amazed at library staff. They took their time to actually visit us at Pine Ridge and bring food for harvesters. Normally we would have those in the central library, et cetera. So we were able to get 392 pounds of food. And again, that's mostly due to library staff. So big kudos to them. We are also applying for the second draw on the PPP loan, and that would be about $23,000. One of the reasons our financial reserves are so strong coming into this year is Shanta has watched and been able to get several other grants too for us that we would have not otherwise gotten had she not been really taking a watchful eye to that. So we're looking forward to that second draw. And then I know you all like to hear kind of about some strange different things that we've sold. And I really thought the one we sold for almost $200 was a video collection of Western TV hero shows, such as the Cisco Kid and Bonanza and the Roy Rogers Show. So I thought that was kind of fun to see. And that's all I have to report unless anyone has any questions.
The question, Bethany Griffith. You had mentioned that you had somebody looking at grants just COVID related. Is that something that you're looking to expand, since there are quite a lot of grants available for all kinds of private partnerships and nonprofits and stuff? We don't want to be leaving money on the table if that is a possibility.
Amen. I completely agree. And we have sort of a good line on that. We're a part of a nonprofit association that helps us, just keeps all of its members updated as far as what's out there. And then Shanta has some really good connections through other libraries and places that she watches. So that is absolutely correct. We want to make sure we don't leave $1 on the table.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any more questions? Thank you, Jeannie. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Next up is the Johnson County Library Foundation report presented by Stephanie Stolzheimer.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, Jeannie. Great, great acknowledgement about the collaboration between the Friends and Foundation. It's been a great year. It's probably been a good year now that we've started to really collaborate with this development department. And you're right, we have Sean and other staff people to thank for that, to say, we need to collaborate more. And hello, it's been great. So thank you, Jeannie, for all you're doing. And I'll just hop into the foundation report. 2021 is the 25th anniversary for the foundation. 1996. Think back. Where were you in 1996? It was the first year for the foundation. Asher Langworthy was the first president of the board of directors. And there were 26 community leaders who made up the board. And I'll share a sampling of names that some of you may know. Kay Robeson, who Jeannie may know this, but she was one of the founding mommies of the Friends. Jan Myers, Congresswoman Jan Myers, Fred Logan, he might be here today. Caroline McKnight, Bill Franklin, past mayor of Prairie Village, I think, and Joanne Berkeley, her legacy lives on at the foundation through the Joanne Berkeley Writers Fund. Because of the anniversary, the 2021 board members will integrate this anniversary into our communications plan and take the opportunity to reach out to past board members and express our appreciation. And so back to 2021, we've done some wrap up. So the annual appeal, we closed the books on that. The theme was nothing can keep us from a good book. I think I've been showing you this for the past few months. But again, the community just rallied, and this was the best campaign in the 6 years that we've tracked this event, or this fundraising campaign. 179 donors gave over $45,000 to this annual campaign. And then in terms of 2020 wrap up, this isn't in the written report, but I want you to know that we posted to the foundation website today the 2020 donor list. That includes financial contributions from individuals, corporations, small businesses, foundations, and bequests. We had 466 donors give a total of $892,000. And a number of you here today are on that list. So just thank you. Thank you for your support of the foundation. And it just, those financial contributions make all the difference. We also posted to the foundation website an impact statement with some detail about the funding that went directly to library resources. That total was $175,000 dispersed to the collection and to 10 library programs. And if you want to take a look at all that, just go to our website. It's joco.libraryfoundation.org. So the next thing I want to just let you know about is in January, last month, we held a Zoom author event with Jim Hoy, cowboy storyteller. Again, a number of you were on that, came to the event. It was an appreciation event for foundation donors, friends of the library, and volunteers. And Jim was great. He told wonderful, wonderful stories from his book, My Flint Hills, Observations and Reminiscences from America's Last Tallgrass Prairie. And we had 127 guests. It was lovely. It was a nice thing to do on a Sunday afternoon in January. And finally, Library Let's Loose planning is underway, September 18th. We're planning for a virtual event. However, we think it's a good idea to plan for a physical in-person version. So it's likely I will be back
Hi,
next
Tina.
month.
This is Wayne Burke from Spring Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for giving me a call back.
Sure.
Oh.
Whoops.
What?
I was just calling to inquire. I understand that you guys are going to
Amy, you want me to keep going or what do you want?
location
Well, can
district
Michaela or
offices.
Sean mute him? Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we go. Magic. Okay, so finally we're Library Let's Loose, September 18th, planning for a virtual, thinking we may have a physical in-person version. So next month, it's very likely I will be back to ask for a library branch, probably Lenexa, to see if we could dedicate Lenexa for September 18th for some kind of virtual version of for a gathering of some people. And it'll be totally whatever works for the library. It won't be wild and crazy. So that concludes my report. Are there any questions? Thank you very much.
Congratulations on 25 years. That's
Right?
exciting. Yes.
Right. Fred Logan was like in the first class. Thank you, Fred.
I was in the
My
same-
pleasure.
I very much enjoyed the Jim Hoy event too. That was very, very nice.
Right? It was good. Thank
Yeah.
you. I'm so glad. You guys are the best. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Yep.
All right. Next up is the Liaison Board of County Commissioners, Commissioner Hanslick.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm trying to get my, there we go. Great. Just a couple of brief updates. First of all, last Thursday, February 4th, during the Board of County Commissioners meeting, we met as the Public Building Commission and gave final approval for the construction contract for the Central Resource Library staff and space consolidation. It was an interesting and lively discussion, but ultimately it was approved. Secondly, I wanted to also mention that next week, February 18th, the Board of County Commissioners is scheduled to have a committee of the whole and hear from the Friends of the Library in regard to the Lackman project. So we will look forward to hearing from you all next week. Also, some good news. Wanted to mention this because I think this also impacts the library. We had a report today from the county manager that Johnson County has once again achieved a triple A bond rating. And we, and I said as Johnson County, are one of only 42 counties in the country. That's out of 3,141 counties that have that kind of rating. It's 1.34% of all counties. And I think it is a huge testament to how well this county manages its money, how reliable we are, and it is a huge cost savings for our citizens and our residents because we can get bonds at very low rates because of that triple A bond rating. So that is something to celebrate. And finally, last but not least, I want to mention, and this is following up from a discussion we had at the last library board meeting. If you recall, our friend Fabian Shepard talked about his uncle, Ray Anthony Shepard, has written a couple books, and I took advantage of that and checked out one of the books from the library. The other one, the library doesn't have yet, so I'm waiting on that. But so I recently finished reading Fabian's cousin's book called Now or Never, the 54th Massachusetts Infantry's War to End Slavery. It was basically about this Black African-American infantry division that fought in the Civil War on the Union side. And as I had told Fabian, I sent him a note and I told him that first of all, his cousin is an excellent writer. It was very readable and easy to follow. And secondly, I was just blown away by this little known story of the harsh challenges faced by these Black soldiers in regiments during the Civil War. They had unequal pay, at times no pay. They had poor supplies. They were sent first into battle in the most dangerous situations, and they still continued to be determined to fight for their freedom. And so I really appreciate that Fabian's book, uncle's book, has commemorated and preserved these sacrifices, and I highly recommend that book. I think a couple people said they've either read it or they have got it, but it's a great book, and I look forward to reading the next one when the Johnson County Library gets it. And that's my report. If there are any questions, I'd be glad to take those.
Commissioner, thank you for the sentiments you expressed. And I have an update for you. We had some of our members of our C-suite in town as we're relocating our facility. And one of them happened to be in my office right after I pulled up your email, and it happened to be on the screen. And I just said, hey, check this out. This is a really nice thing. And so as a result of that and further conversations, on the 23rd of this month, my uncle will be addressing our entire global unit for our town hall meeting. That's and yeah, and our human resources president ordered several copies of the book to distribute to children of our employees. So that's a kind of a neat thing.
That is great. That is great. Yeah, I'm not very good at judging like grade level. It certainly would be something middle school students could read and understand, even later elementary, I think.
So the target audience for that one is high school and college students, so young adult, and the new one, Runaway, The Daring Escape of Ona Judge, is 5 to 10-year-olds.
Great. That's the one I'm waiting for. Thank you.
Fabian, did you say that this was about the 54th?
Yes.
Massachusetts Military?
Yes, Bethany.
The movie Glory that Denzel Washington was in.
Right. When Charleston was taken over, they went in with the other Union troops. With
Antietam. Okay.
Yep.
Because we're all information collectors, being that we do library stuff, so I had to confirm that before we could move on. So I just wanted to make sure I was right.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanslick. And I understand that you have been assigned to the library for the coming year too. We're very happy about that. All right. Next up is the board counsel, Fred Logan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we're going to split the report this evening. I'm going to take the first part on the updated administrative regulation manual policies, and then Andy is going to offer some comments on a piece of legislation, Senate Bill 13, that we're following in the legislature. You know that the staff undertook a major effort to make the administrative regulations manual as clear as possible with respect to the use of pronouns. And I reviewed their work and thought they did just a superb job. You're going to be asked to approve it this evening. I'll give you just a couple of examples. In ARM 201030 on suspension, the former language had been when the county librarian suspends, denies, or restricts an individual's library privileges, he or she may share information about that suspension, blah, blah, blah. Well, there's a little bit of a dubious nature there. Who's he or she? Is it the county librarian, or is it the individual's library privileges, whose library privileges are being suspended? So now it will read, when the county librarian suspends, denies, or restricts an individual's library privileges, the county librarian may share information about the suspension. That's a pretty good example of the kind of clarification that's been made. In the patron code of behavior, for example, the language had been his or her use of the workstation. Well, they've just now modified it to be use of the workstation in general. So I think the clarifications are sound, and I think the staff done a good job promoting clarity with respect to the changes. So with that, let me, unless there are any questions on that, I'm going to turn it over to Andy to give you a report on Senate Bill 13, which is pending before the legislature.
Good afternoon, Andrew Logan, Library Board Counsel. We've been asked to just give you a brief point of information about Senate Bill 13, which is in the Kansas legislature, and it's currently before the House Tax Committee. So this is still under consideration. But this bill would essentially, it institutes what's called a revenue neutral rate, which would hold government units from being able to collect property tax dollars that are in excess of the current property valuations. So the tax dollars from year to year would remain the same at that revenue neutral rate unless a government unit like the library were to give notice to taxpayers in the county. So effectively the library, if they wanted to capture those dollars from the increase of the property valuations, the library would have to give notice to taxpayers by mail as well as holding a hearing. And so we're bringing this to your attention just simply because it may be the kind of legislation that were it passed by the legislature and signed by the governor, would have potential administrative costs for the library, as well as potentially affecting the budget process and timeline, just given how it all would potentially work together. So we just thought it would be important for you to understand that. It has passed the Senate in late January. And like I said, it's before the House. There may still be some changes to the legislation, but we just thought it would be a good thing to bring to your attention, given its impact here on the library. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer anything.
This is Sean Casserly. I just have a clarifying question. So I understand this. If a house is today worth $100,000, and then in a year was now valued at $200,000, the library or any taxing district could tax on the $100,000, which was what the house was valued at. But if we wanted to collect on the new assessed value of the $200,000, we would have to go through and do the mailing and hold a public meeting. Am I understanding that correctly?
Sean, that's correct. They would have to, the library would have to go through, and there would be through the county clerk's office, notices mailed out to each taxpayer, and then an invitation in that notice to attend a hearing to provide input.
Now, how does it work? And you may not know this, if the $100,000 house then falls and is only worth $80,000, would you have to go through the same process, or is it just means less than $100,000, then you can just collect on that amount? Is that,
I
is that
believe that's
correct?
Yes.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Bethany Griffith, I had another question. Is this really more just about citizen oversight into how tax funds are raised, that it would just be an invitation to a conversation, but that it's not like it's a referendum or a vote on it? We could still raise the taxes if we wanted to. We just have to have more
Absolutely.
public accountability, that this is just a way to make taxing districts talk to their constituents versus limiting our ability to raise taxes.
Sure, and that, yeah, we are just bringing it to your attention just simply because there are costs associated with that. The library might have to pay for the cost to send out a mailer if they wanted to collect that additional revenue. And it may change the budgeting timeline for the library and for other government units. That's all.
This is Commissioner Hanslick. I appreciate your bringing this up, Andrew. I was just speaking with one of our assistant county managers about it yesterday, and my understanding is that it's gone through a lot of different there are a lot of different things happening with it, and right now, I think my understanding is it's kind of at a standstill, but we will see. I think part of the concern from the county's standpoint, I mean, we already have a public hearing about our budget, and we have never had to go to an election to because we've gone over the property or over the tax lid. But the concern is, as I understand it, that this bill would require the county to send out property tax notices before we really have all the valuation information. And the concern among counties is that we would be stuck with whatever it was we sent out. Even if the valuations changed, we would have to honor whatever that was originally. And so there are a lot of, I think, moving parts to this bill, and you can read there's a lot going on with it. You can read in the media about it, but my sense is, at least at this point, it's kind of on hold, but tomorrow could be another day in the legislature. I don't know if Joe Waters has any other insight into that, but I had talked to Maury yesterday about it.
Maury is more expert in this topic than I, but those are some of the challenges. The timing is an important thing for us to, as Andrew said, in terms of the impact on our budget processes, the timing will be a challenge. Those are usually things that can be worked out in legislation. So I know we're working that side of it. There are also questions around, and I believe what they're after, the way it's structured is it's the total valuation of the properties in your community. So the example on the increase in valuation on an individual home is right on target. There's also complexities, though, with new construction. If the total valuation is what is being controlled or monitored or is the target that you must not exceed, then your home may be at $100,000. But if there's a new home built on an empty lot next door, that also needs to be accounted for and would impact the mill levy. Do I have that right, Andrew? Am I giving that explanation correctly?
I believe that's right with respect to the new construction.
And there's lots of those kinds of subtleties. So it'll be complicated and a challenge to implement, but and costly to implement.
So, Madam Chair, we felt that the legislation was sufficiently important to bring it to the library board's attention. It's hard to tell if it's going to pass. It passed easily in the Senate, but a lot of questions, as Joe says and as Commissioner Hanslick says, have been raised about it. But we just felt it was sufficiently important that we should bring it to the library board's attention. And that completes our report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Andy. Just keep us informed of what happens.
We will.
Next up is the county librarian report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to invite David Varatny, our Chief Financial Officer, to give the financial report. David?
Thanks, Sean. I'll direct you guys to page 10. What we're going to look at here is just the end of December 2020 and kind of how we ended our year. As you can see, we've collected a little over 39.5 million, which ends up being around 98% of what we had planned to collect in revenues. So that's pretty good news. From an expense standpoint, we ended the year a little over 37.2 million. So we only spent about 92% of our original expenditure budget. So that offset, well, more than offset the reduction in revenue that we had. In fact, and this isn't final, but this is close, we ended up having about 2.3 million more in revenue than expenses. And we'll be closing the books, I think, hopefully tomorrow. And so we'll be able to give you some final numbers. But that amount will be what goes into those reserves amounts that you can see kind of at the bottom of the page once we do close the books officially. So we'll get you some new estimates on that, hopefully for March. Yeah, real good. The salaries and benefits ended up being about 93% of what was anticipated. A good portion of that came by way of our furloughing. And then us not being fully open to be able to do programs and then being closed for several months ended up having considerable savings in contractuals and commodities, as would be anticipated with anything like that. So, like I said, we kept our expenses low as there was a lot of uncertainty of things going on, and we knew we were going to come short in some revenue categories, and more than made up for that. So with that, I'll stand for any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got one comment. This is Sean again. This was done intentionally. We really, as soon as we became aware, it's almost a year ago in March, that we would be experiencing some form of lockdown due to COVID. We realized that fines and fees, particularly, which is about between $650,000 and $750,000, may be affected. We didn't know at that time whether we were going to continue doing programming, but we knew that the pandemic would have an economic effect on our community, and so that at that point we really began to watch our expenses very closely. The furloughing of staff, which we did, the closing of our facilities, and the moving of our program virtually. Moving our programs virtually did have a cost, but we were able to recoup that. But because this happened so quickly, we did not want to be in a situation where we were over budget. And I want to thank Dave and his staff and the rest of the administrative team for really curbing expenses for this year. I think as we come through into 2021, we have a much better view of where we're going to be financially. There may be some challenges up ahead, but where we took a very conservative approach in 2020, so to assure that our expenses would be well below our revenue. So thanks, Dave. I'd like to invite Adam and Lacey Griffin to come up and give us some system-wide statistics, and then Lacey is the collection development manager, and she's going to be talking to us this month.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sean. I am Adam Wathen. I'm the Associate Director for System-Wide Services at the library. And this month, we really do have a lot of trends to show you. I have our normal report of core statistics, and then our reopening statistics report, and then a summary of 2020. And then Lacey Griffin, our Collection Development Manager, will present content statistics to you. We'll start today, as usual, with the core operational statistics of digital circulation, physical circulation, and visitation. And December figures show that, similar to previous months, digital circulation continues to stay much higher than previous years. Physical circulation and visitation continues to gain ground and now is only slightly beneath the previous years, despite shorter hours and lack of branch visitation. You can see that visitation there is significantly lower than previous years. So our circulation is a pretty good story, and our visitation still lags behind. Any question on the core statistics before I step into reopening statistics? Okay. Alyssa, if you can go over to the PowerPoint. Yeah. For our reopening statistics this month, we are looking through January of 2021, and the first slide shows that our physical checkouts and the number of patrons checking out continues to pace below previous years at about the same approximate rates. Our second slide shows our holds. Patrons continue to place holds at the same rate as prior years, and Lacey will talk more about holds in her presentation in a few minutes. On our third slide, you'll see visitation continues to lag at 58% lower than last year's levels. We had seen a slight recovery in visitation in December. January saw the drop again. We will likely see a further drop in visitation in February as Central closed for a week in preparation of our construction, and as we move to a smaller Central during construction. And the fourth slide shows that computer use continues to pace significantly lower than last year, but those patrons who do need our computers are using them for longer duration than before the pandemic. Any questions about reopening statistics?
Adam, Fabian Shepherd.
Sure.
I'm a little surprised about the holds. I'll wait because I understand we're getting more details, but as I've visited branches, I've seen holds that would indicate to me that they've increased significantly.
Yeah, our holds still traffic really well, and you think that they would be higher than previous years? Is that what you mean?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, we are doing significant traffic in holds, but it doesn't show that the holds have gone up significantly, but they certainly have paced with previous years. We did have a couple months where they're several percentage points above previous years, but it does look like a lot of holds traffic, and we do have a lot of holds traffic in branches. So I agree. I think that holds are a fast business for us, and we may see that continue. We may see that people gravitate toward holds as some of these trends continue, like with the services that we offer for drive up and things like that. Those are holds services that are primarily driven by holds.
Well, and Adam, I was actually thinking that the quarantine would have more to do with it, because previously a book is returned, it's available, it's right there ready to be checked out. But with the quarantines in place, it would appear that the holds should be increasing.
Yeah, I think that's right. That we also have had a uplift in our digital content, and so we may have seen some of the people who would hold a current book have shifted over to digital content. But I'm not sure if that's connected or not. It's one of the storylines that I think I could tell that may explain the anomaly that it hasn't gone up more. But I do think that we've seen the impact on our digital content of quarantine and people isolating And the holds staying where other in previous years while our circulation has dropped is also an indicator that holds usage has gone up even though our circulation has dropped. So in those, and Lacey will talk about that in a few minutes as well. So I'll switch over to our 2020 year in review. That's on page 16 of the packet. And on the first graph, you can see that our circulation was down 26% overall from previous years, and door count is lower by about twice that, which is at 55%. The number of users on the next graph has dropped slightly, down 2.4%, while the number of new users dropped significantly from last year, about 13.5%. It is still pacing within the range of the past few years, but I hope to see these numbers go back up later this year as we reinstate services, and we may have opportunity for more in-person services. On page 17, you'll see that programming numbers dropped precipitously in both number of programs and our program attendance. When we closed for COVID-19, we had no service line to provide programs virtually, and our programming teams procured our On24 platform, developed protocols and training for virtual programs, and shifted our programming lines to virtual spaces. We have learned a lot from this process, and we are now seeing attendance numbers in our virtual programs that are similar to our physical programming. Something new in our programming is that we now have the ability to record our programming content and allow patrons to view that content at their convenience. And this year, we've had an additional 47,644 viewers watch recordings of our programs. And if you included those viewers as program attendees, our program attendance has only dropped by 8,500 attendees in an extraordinarily disruptive year. We will begin to track views of recorded programs alongside regular attendance in the future. And I think that this is a strong sign that the addition of virtual programming lines for our patrons will add significant value for our community. And finally, our technology use has also gone down. We have a drop of over 60% in both our public computer use and in the number of times patrons connect to our wireless in our buildings. This paces really closely to our drop in visitors. And all told, 2020 was a very disruptive year for us in our service lines. Only our digital content users seem to benefit from the changes in our practice. And that being said, we've shifted service lines to deliver content, programming, and technology in ways that we really haven't before. I see the lessons learned in building on our previous service lines as we continue to recover from the disruptions of 2020. Do you have any questions about the year in review before I turn it over to Lacey? Great. Thank you all. Lacey, you have the floor.
Right. Hi, everyone. My name is Lacey Griffin. I am the Collection Development Manager for Johnson County Library. Today, we'll be looking at updated collection statistics that now include 2020. The first graph that you see here, total collection expenditures, shows the total expenditure on collection over the last 10 years. This includes digital, physical, and also processing costs. You can see that there was a spike of expenditures in 2018. This accounts for the addition of the Monticello Library and its opening day collection. We received $1 million to purchase new materials for that building, and that money was spent over 3 years. So between 2016, 2017, and with the bulk of it being spent in 2018. On the second graph, you will see total physical collection. This shows the number of items in our physical collection, and it's remained fairly stable at 1.1 million items from 2011 to 2016. There was an increase in materials in 2017 and 18 as we grew our collection to accommodate the Monticello Library, expanding our system to 14 branches. Over the last 2 years, we have shifted some of our holdings to digital resources and dramatically increased our digital offerings in 2020 as a result of the pandemic. This accounts for the drop in physical items back to a balance of about 1.1 million materials system-wide. In the third graph, called New Items Added and Items Weeded Annually, you will see how many physical books that we have and how many we've added or weeded from our collection. There's a spike in weeded materials in 2018 After Monticello's opening, we increased our weeding to rebalance the collection system-wide. In 2019, we have returned to kind of a stable weeding rate that mirrors 2015. Also in 2019 and 2020, we placed a focus on ordering for our e-content collection. And so while we focused spending on physical books in 17 and 18 in preparation of our new buildings, we focused on expanding our audiovisual and digital collections in 2019 and 2020. All right. On the next graph, you can see it's our total e-content circulation, that our e-content use has increased steadily from year to year. This includes not only ebooks and e-audiobooks, but also e-magazines, databases, streaming video, and e-learning software. To keep up with the popularity of the materials during the pandemic, we also increased our e-content spending by 26,000. That's why you can see the kind of exponential curve going on there. The next graph, total ebook and school ebook usage, shows the use of just our ebooks. We can see an increase in both circulation of both collections of the ebook for our patrons, and then also in the number of ebooks that were checked out through our partnership with neighboring school districts. Johnson County Library and our ebook vendor, Baker & Taylor, created a project called the Community Share Program back in 2016. This program allows schools to choose titles to display as available on their own library media websites. Students can then check out available public library ebook and e-audio materials through their school devices and logins. Since 2016, the program has grown to include Shawnee Mission, Blue Valley, DeSoto, Spring Hill, and Olathe school districts. In 2020, the Community Share program accounted for 9% of all of our ebook circulation. And last, you will see the graph 2020 holds and circulation, which shows 2020 circulation by month in the yellow line, as compared to the number of holds that we had in, that's the blue line. You can see pretty steadily that approximately 33% of our circulation comes from patrons getting materials off the hold shelf. This is an increase of 8% from 2019. So in 2019, only 25% of our total circulation came from holds, and now it's 33%. To accommodate greater holds use, JCL began a curbside pickup at 5 of our branches, Leawood, Cedar Row, Gardner, and this month we added Spring Hill and Oak Park, which allows patrons to stay in their vehicles while we check out the materials and deliver the holds curbside to them. All right, those are all of my stats. Do you have any questions?
Lacey, this is Sean. Great job. Thanks for the statistics, and again, thanks for the partnerships with the schools. You know, where the library and schools can work together, the taxpayer saves money, and the schools, we're not duplicating our efforts. And when they're able to seamlessly get to our resources and access them, I think that's just an example of how school systems and libraries are working really well together to share expenses. So thank you, and thank you for expanding that.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody.
Now I'd like to invite Scott Syme to give us the update on the Capitol Library Master Plan.
Good afternoon, everybody. Scott Syme with the Live Project Coordinator for the library. Today I've got 3 updates for you. The first one is about our central renovation. Next, I'll talk a little bit about the Antioch replacement project. And then finally, I'll give just a quick overview of our overall capital projects timeline. And I'll start with central. So today I'll give you an update on progress moving out staff and stuff, give a construction update, and talk a little bit about next steps and review the timeline. So, well, that's okay. Could you go back one, Alyssa? With the CBU project, we are providing temporary workspaces for about half of the staff that work at Central, who typically work at Central. And then the other half will continue working remotely. A couple of things to note. Our materials handling staff have landed over at the county's Northeast office, and I want to give a big thank you to the building staff for sharing their space with us temporarily. I believe the spot works really well because it has great access for our couriers and materials handling staff who receive all the materials every day. And then next, I want to talk a little bit about our makerspace staff. They're landing temporarily in Shawnee's basement and will deliver online programming of that space. Other spaces across the system at library buildings are in use for quarantine of materials, furniture, storage, and staff learning and new employee orientation. Here's a quick snapshot of kind of who landed where. As I mentioned, our materials handling staff is temporarily over at the Northeast office. Our customer experience communication staff, some of those folks have landed at our support services building. Central branch staff, some are going to stay at Central and some will be redeployed to other locations. IT staff have a temporary home over at the Antioch Library. I mentioned makerspace staff already. And then all of our other central staff are working remote. And we are providing some reservable hoteling stations at Antioch for their use when they need it. Moving everybody out at the beginning of a project isn't a process we've had to do yet for Monticello or Lenexa. A few staff, our public service staff, moved out for the Central Phase 1 renovation work back in 2014 and 15. And this time around, it was a challenge that took many minds to plan and execute. So I'd like to take a minute to recognize the people and the teams that got us moved out. They've done an outstanding job at making this happen. So I'll share some of their names, hopefully most of their names, on the next slide. I just took a screenshot of one of our online meetings there. That got most of us on that planning team. And then you can tell by the just number of names on this slide that it took a lot of minds to both plan and execute this work. So thank you guys and very well done. Couple of quick construction updates. Last week, as Commissioner Hanslick mentioned, we had the PBC approved the construction contract amendment with Titan Built, and on Monday, February 8th, Central closed temporarily to build partitions, creating that little central space that we've talked about before. We anticipate reopening Little Central on Monday the 15th, next Monday, as planned, and currently we're preparing the Little Central space. We anticipate beginning demolition next. Next slide, please. A couple of next steps here. Little Central service starts next Monday, the 15th, and you'll see a list of services there that we're going to offer out of Little Central. And next, I think we have a timeline slide. So this red arrow shows you where we're at today. We are just at the very beginning of construction. And then Alyssa, if you'll switch over to the PowerPoint with the pictures, I'll show those just real quick. Thanks. So these photos are hot off the press. This was this morning over at Central. You'll see kind of, if just to orient you, this is right after you step in the front doors, our main service point there. Back behind the holds and those yellow columns, you'll see that some of those partition walls are already in place. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. And this pans over to the left. You'll see the kind of structure and work happening there to put partition walls in still. And then the next photo, please. And then this is still a bit of work left to go as far as putting the structure up and putting the walls up. So we are in progress getting those partitions up. And I just wanted to take a minute to kind of show off the work that's happening behind closed doors right now. We need to go ahead and finish that partition, and there are a few branch and IT tasks left to do before we open up on Monday. And that concludes my report on Central. Any questions about Central?
Scott, this is Commissioner Hanslick. I just had a real quick question. I didn't see on the list of Little Central services. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I do see them there. Public PCs. There will be computers available. Can you just speak to how many, and will there be reduced time limits for usage?
Sure, I'm happy to talk to that. So yes, we have, and I don't have a photo of it, I apologize. In our current learning lab, which was, if you look at the picture that's on the screen, it's to the left of that. That is going to be our temporary home for public PCs. And we are able to fit 9 of them in there with appropriate social distancing. And then 10th station for printing, paying for your prints and then going ahead and printing them. And there aren't any changes to the amount of time that patrons will be able to spend on those. It'll be consistent with the rest of the system. Yeah, thanks for asking. Good question.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead on to Antioch then. So just a little bit about Antioch historically. It is our longest serving location. It was known as the headquarters branch until the mid-90s when Central was opened and Antioch turned into Antioch. In 2017, the city of Merriam approached the library about partnering on their new community center campus. And we worked later together on a conceptual design study for the site. Antioch Replacement Building is anticipated to be a 1-story building, about 15,750 square feet, which is very comparable to the current kind of public or branch part of current Antioch. We anticipate it will have a drive-through, and just for reference, if you're familiar with some of our other buildings, that new size is a bit bigger than the Gardner Library. It's about the same size as Oak Park and a bit smaller than Corinth. A little bit of information about, let's see, Alyssa, could you go to the next slide, please? About architectural response, we had 10 firms respond to our RFP, which I think is a really good turnout. Our selection committee is individually ranked proposals. Those have been compiled by the county purchasing department. We work with the county purchasing department and facilities to undertake this selection process. And from that, a short list has been determined. Interviews with those shortlist candidates are scheduled for Monday. And we anticipate bringing back a recommendation for architecture at our March meeting. Okay, next slide, please. Well, I already said the first bullet. Sorry about that, guys. And then we'll start design once the architect is on board. And at that point, also, we will bring an updated timeline back to the board. Okay, that is it for Antioch. Any questions on that? Okay.
I just want to say, this is David Sims. I just want to say, working as a liaison on Central and also now in Antioch, the amount of hard work that Scott puts into it and the updates, and just want to applaud him for it and everything he thinks about, along with the rest of his team.
That is very kind. Thank you. And I do want to say out loud that I am often the spokesperson, and there are definitely more minds at work than mine on this. So I want to give a shout out to our staff at the library, our admin team, and Tad, who is our branch manager over at Antioch, and definitely our facilities partners, Abby and Juan and Sean and Georgia. We couldn't do it without those guys. And then the last thing that I'll share with you guys today is just a quick look at our overall timeline. Next slide, please. So this is the same as I presented last month. So no changes there. We're right in the middle of Central, just started construction. Anticipate getting more information to the BOCC in a study session about the Friends and Lackman soon. Antioch is just beginning, and then later this year we're scheduled to do our Rural Renewal Initiative study. And that concludes my report for today. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Scott. 2020 it looks like it's going to be a very busy year for you and your team, but we're making really great progress. I want to again just echo the words that David said. Thank you to you and to everyone. I also want to thank our Commissioner Hanslick and the other commissioners as part of the PBC for voting in the affirmative for that last week, and us being able to then go and purchase bonds for this project and move forward. So it is really appreciated. Next, I would like to have the reopening team give us an update. That's Jen and Nancy.
Good afternoon, everybody. Jennifer Munkin, Associate Director for Branch Services, and Nancy Birmingham, who's the Assistant Branch Manager at our Leawood Branch and also the project manager for this, will also be co-presenting with me today. Alyssa, you can go to the next slide. So here's kind of an overview of what we're going to be talking about. Again, what other library systems are doing compared to what we are doing, what the schools are doing to the best of our knowledge, which has been information that Nancy has been working hard to try to get, and then what we're doing to talk about determining adding hours back, and then our possible timeline. Next slide. And we'll go ahead and turn it over to Nancy here to talk about these things.
Good evening. Yes, we've been comparing ourselves both locally and nationally this month to other library systems. As many of you know, our residents visit a multiple libraries, both within our system and within the metropolitan area. So currently, we are very much on track with Olathe in our offerings. Olathe, I believe, is still at the 1 hour computer sessions, whereas ours has increased, and they have a little more open browsing and seating arrangements than we have. So very much on track with Olathe. The Kansas City, Kansas Public Library is still closed to the public at this point, though the schools are looking at reopening, and the Kansas City, Kansas is closely tied to the Kansas City Public Schools. Mid-Continent still has closed browsing, but they do have curbside delivery or drive-through service at several buildings. Kansas City, Missouri, meanwhile, has the stacks closed, but they are starting to make appointments for browsing in their kids section. They've also really acknowledging the value of the children in the library to pick out their own books. So we were happy to see that. Next slide. For a nationwide look, in a realm study that you all heard me talk about, did a survey of 585 libraries and museums nationwide. And in the 4 categories, we are firmly in the largest category of partially open with limited services. It is only a very small targeted group that is fully open out of the 585. And a significant amount of those institutions remain closed to public access. Next slide, please. This is a very wordy slide that tells you, which Mr. Burke I'm sure knows better than any of us, exactly how the school districts have reached some of their criteria. This slide, I have to caveat, is 10 days old, which is very old in a school systems plan currently in the metropolitan area. The majority of the 6 big districts in Johnson County will be planning on being in person by the end of March. KCK schools, meanwhile, will be virtual through March. Again, this addresses the various approaches that the school districts have within our metropolitan area. Next slide. There were questions during the last board meeting about exactly how many of our folks are normally out on some sort of COVID-19 related leave. So without approaching HIPAA or various other HR related restrictions, this is the number of library employees who were on quarantine and in isolation each month and have Americans with Disabilities Act request related to COVID-19. So I'll pause a little more normal than my talking speed to let y'all look at this slide. Do you have any questions on this slide in particular that I'm allowed to answer?
And I would just point out also that these numbers are the highest that they have been all year. The numbers over the summer were much smaller. So the fourth quarter of 2020 was the worst that we saw with our staff.
Next slide, please.
All right. This one's mine. So the reopening team has been discussing nonstop since April what we need to do to get back to our normal hours of service and all of our services that we offer. As you know, the numbers have been continually rising, and it's been difficult to actually put a number or a percentage that we wanted to hit in order to reopen. Because things change so quickly, it makes it very difficult to do that. The current science that we are reading, the data that we're reading is showing that there's still a pretty significant wave to come through until we're able to get people vaccinated. And we just don't know what the new variant strains are going to do. So that also makes our decision very difficult. What we are reading is that it will be the end of April or the beginning of May before things start to decline, where our positivity rates go down. And also an interesting phenomenon is that the positivity rates are going down in Johnson County, but so is the number of tests. So that skews that number a little bit. And so it's hard to rely on that number as a potential gating criteria. We are interested in using a vaccination rate. Right now, it's still a very low number of Johnson County residents who have been vaccinated. And we still are monitoring the availability of staff, which is why I wanted to show you that slide that shows you how many staff are quarantined each month. And when they're quarantined, it's 10 to 14 days of quarantine. So they're potentially out for 2 weeks. And then longer if they're sicker. So those numbers still continue to affect how we are able to offer services. So at this time, we're not recommending adding hours or services back, at least until April. And we're hoping that the positivity rates will continue to drop and the vaccination rates will continue to go up, and that we'll have a better idea of what's happening with the different strains of the virus that are starting to make their way to Kansas and Missouri. We've had the first reports of those strains in both states now. So, Sean, did you want to add anything at this point?
The only thing I want to say is, these things are fluid. I think we learned this, just this week that the AstraZeneca vaccine isn't as good on the South African virus as they thought, and South Africa is looking at others. We're seeing case positivity rates drop because, as Jen said, testing's dropped. Why is testing dropped? Testing's dropped because the people that do the testing are now the same people who are doing the vaccinations. Again, today, I think Dr. Fauci was on either this morning or late last night saying that production is ramping up, and that, again, by April, we will be able to, citizens will be able to get access to the vaccine, and will have reached the final tier, and it'll be widely distributed. Last week it was at the end of summer, so we of course will stay flexible, and if we see things change and we're able to open sooner, then we definitely will. But as of today, the first time that I'm thinking that, or where we're shooting for, is really the beginning of May. That's how far we're at. If things get worse, then we'll come back and each month give an update. If things get better, then we'll adjust that and move the time frame up. But it is a moving target, as Jen said.
Thanks, Sean. Alyssa, you can show the next slide. which again is the same slide we've been showing. These are the levels of service we would add back in, and in pretty much the order we would be adding them. We do also continue to talk about the quarantining of materials. And while the science doesn't indicate that this is a high risk area, if we were to stop that, there's significant ripple effects to that that we're just not quite ready to deal with. It would empty our study rooms, and then we would be getting requests for study rooms, and we're not ready to open those back up yet. It would completely change the workflow. And so we would have to rethink that. So, and we also don't want to be the first library to stop doing it. At this point, no libraries have stopped quarantining yet. And so that's another factor that we're considering. Are there any other questions you have for us at this time?
I got a comment. This is David Sims, Jennifer. Just because a patron brought this to my attention about opening up, I guess, bringing back some of the furniture and just allowing people to sit down. And I mean, restaurants are doing it where I know we don't have enough staff necessarily to police everything, but is there a way just to bring back some of the tables for somebody to sit a little bit, you know, and provide wipes and have the social distancing with limited number of chairs, and it seems like we could kind of speed that up a little bit just in light of everything else that's going on, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of transmission amongst contact on paper, on tables, things like that. So just my 2 cents worth.
Yep. I can answer this. I'm reluctant to do this. The Realm study has only tested one variant of the COVID, and not the UK, Brazilian, or South African. And we know that the UK is here, so we have no idea. The other thing that we know is that where people are catching the disease is actually in restaurants. It's in communal eating. So that's more of a probably a political issue in this country, but when you look at other countries, such as, in Europe, United Kingdom, they've completely shut down those businesses, which we have not done in the States. But we do know that that's where transmission rates are the greatest, is in your restaurant settings. Even with the distancing, people are in a confined space. Would not be my recommendation to change what we're doing. We still have the record that none of our staff that we are aware of all those staff, have ever contracted COVID. But making this place where people can linger just does not, I don't think, is a good business practice.
Are there any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you all very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Okay, this time I'd like to invite Tricia to come and give the trimester report on the strategic plan.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tricia Solentrop. I am the Deputy County Librarian, and I will be talking about giving you a strategic plan update. Every trimester, we have our managers of our departments give us a synopsis of the work that they have completed in the last trimester and how that supports and connects with the strategic plan goals. In 2019, you may remember when we were writing the strategic plan, our managers developed the goals for their work areas. And so it's fitting that then they report out on that to administration, and then we bring those updates to you. A lot of these details you may be familiar with because we've presented specific things over the last 4 months. So some of this might ring a bell, but I'll hit the highlights of the work that we've accomplished based on the key performance areas and then within each specific goal. So we'll take it away from there. So you can see on the slide the 5 key performance areas. Next slide, please. The first one of education. While it only has one thing listed there, it is a giant thing that we have been working on the last year, but certainly the last 4 months. Things that you've heard about in this online programming work, Women in Money, the Writers Conference, various book clubs that were a huge success. We actually had to add more book clubs for our wide variety of patrons. Civic engagement participation, Elementia, and Race Project. And while the online program that the public sees is one part of it, it seems like the biggest part would be on the backside. We're having staff that are working and training as facilitators, as the producers, kind of the technology producer on the back end. They are spending time on the planning of those programs, the timing of them, that on-air talent, getting them really comfortable with what they're doing. Doing some dry runs to eliminate all the technical challenges that we all have encountered. They're also working and have worked on different standards and structures of online programming to eliminate some easy problems that we can predict and some other kind of interesting situations that we might find ourselves in as far as people who are attending the program who their behavior might be a little out of bounds and how they deal with that in the midst of presenting a program. And then just recently, they have assisted some other libraries who are getting into online programming. So the public part is a small part of it, and there's lots of work on the back end that they have done quite well. Next slide, please. This is in the key performance area of operations. And so there are several goals that we've done work on this particular trimester. That first goal really deals with the budget and that planning process, allocating those resources. So you see we've listed a few of that, some of that work there for you that you've heard about. And if you've been on the library board budget committee, you've certainly participated in that. The CARES Act work, which is the digital navigators, was something that was not in our strategic plan as specific because we couldn't have planned for COVID and the funds that came our way, but really looked at the money that we got, how we were going to allocate or reallocate our resources for staff to pull off this project. So it's a great example of staff changing their turn or tack on the fly and really doing a nice job with that work. Goal 12 really focuses on our assistant branch managers and their staff and their communication and about the work they do. They and their staff do some of the most detailed work because it's working with patrons and all of the materials that flow through our library system. And so you can see some of the highlights there. As you know, we've been in a hiring wave the last several months. And so that is not unusual for those assistant branch managers. Those positions are among the highest turnover in the library just generally. And then with COVID, they did all of that interviewing virtually for the first time. So again, having to take something that they know how to do well and that they're experienced at, work with HR of how you flip that to a virtual experience. So they did a really wonderful job on that. And as you can see, hired 24 full and part-time people to help us kind of fill back up our ranks of people who retired or left the organization in the last year. Next slide, please. And then continuing in the key performance area of operations, several other goals. Two about learning development. As you can imagine with COVID, this department also had to kind of shift. We are very used to in-person trainings, and so was both moving those in-person trainings online to an online format, as well as purchasing online content and connecting with content that might be offered through other libraries or other staff development organizations that we could provide to our staff. And then the back end of that is making sure our staff have the devices, have the technology, have the time to take advantage of those trainings. And then goal 22 is you hear from Scott every month. And so this is a lot of his work on the internal project management side, not necessarily the buildings, but he is a mentor and really helps wrangle and guide everyone who is a project lead. Nancy's a great example. She's working on an internal project to the library, but all of that, the initiating, the planning, managing those projects, the communication. So that is a lot of what Scott does. And we prioritize those every quarter so that the library has a manageable amount of internal projects that we're working on. With COVID, we certainly had to pause several projects and several other ones took its place. So he's continually managing that process. Next slide, please. In the key performance area of community, our goal 4 really focuses on strategic partnerships, a lot of which you hear about when we report out to you at the library board meeting. The one that is very exciting is a bit of a step back, the strategic partner inventory. It's something that we have been wanting to do for several years. We're always encouraged to partner. And we do partner quite a bit, and sometimes those partners or that long list of partners can grow without us even knowing it. So this really helps. This inventory will really help us identify and catalog all the partnerships we have, and then figure out. We have those legacy partnerships. Do we want to continue those? Does the other partner organization want to continue those? And then which partnerships do we need to put more effort into and maybe make even a fuller partnership? So that's a lot of work that has started this past trimester and will go on in the future as well. Next slide, please. This is the key performance area of communication. And we have much work under several goals in this key performance area. The third goal is about that reviewing and looking at the communication for the Johnson County Library. And so you've heard lots about online programming, and we have talked about the decreases from in-person programming to online. This stat is really interesting to me, and I think sums up kind of our patrons. While the physical attendance has dropped dramatically, when you look at the average attendance per program, it hasn't dropped as much as you might think of it. And so when I look at this information and the online programming that we're providing, it's really about opening and expanding access for our patrons. And we can tell by that average attendance per program that that's really hitting the mark with patrons. More people are attending per program. While it may not be our stats of 2019, we're still providing access to our patrons, and maybe patrons who have not had the chance to come in previously. They can watch those programs if they're archived, and maybe the timing is a little bit better. So that is great. It's also a real testament to our communication department for getting the word out about those wide variety of programs that we have. And then goal 10 is also focuses on communication. We have several newsletters, e-newsletters that we send out. Open Book is one, and we've highlighted the open rate. If you know or have any experience with things you send to people in the email, sometimes they don't read them or don't even open them. And so we're really fortunate that our communication department has really developed something that patrons really want. We can tell that by the open rate and the number of unique views. Most of the external contractors that we work with, when they see this stat, their eyes kind of light up. We know that it's about the content of libraries, and our patrons love libraries, so it's an easy match, but they're always a little jealous of that. And then they've also been doing a lot of work on, because they're a new department, and we have 2 new managers in that department, lots of work on their internal procedures. And that's a hard balance. You always want to do a lot, and how do you set up the internal structure that helps you do even more and kind of get your house in order. So they've put lots of effort into that. Next slide, please. These 3 goals continue under the key performance area of communication. And so goal 11 is also about messaging for the library. And we are in collaboration with several county offices on a community resource page. So really looking at every county department probably has something our library patrons are interested in or need. And so how do we make that a little bit easier for our patrons? And then you heard the Friends talk about the Friends website. So we've certainly been doing work on that, as well as in general, the large reopening efforts, which includes curbside pickup. Goal 16 is, again, a lot of what you hear with the comprehensive library master plan each month. So you're very familiar with that work that we've been doing the past 4 months. And then goal 21 is again focused on our assistant branch managers. They have done a lot of work internal to their team and making sure they're using the best technology tools for them to communicate. There are many assistant branch managers at many branches, and so they're a large group. We've also given them in the last year a lot of team development to help them navigate through tough conversations and really produce that consistent communication across all 14 locations. So they have done a lot of work on that particularly in this past 4 months. Next slide, please. And then the last key performance area of convenience. And so we have many goals that we've been doing work on this past trimester. Comprehensive Library Master Plan is goal 2, so you're certainly familiar with that work. Collection management, that's goal 7. So that's from purchase to patron. And so one thing you all have been involved in is the collection development policy update, as well as you've heard about curbside and then our central building upgrade, which will focus on making materials handling a little bit more efficient in that particular building. Goal 8 is all focused on technology, and that is a lot of the work that we have done this year, but certainly this last 4 months. There's nothing that the library does that doesn't have technology in a piece of it. So I've just kind of highlighted a few of the things down there that certainly you've heard about. We have been doing quite a bit of work with our county partner, the Department of Technology and Innovation, with our cybersecurity plan. And that has included training. So our learning and development department has worked on that, as well as some different guidelines and restrictions for cloud services that the library uses, that our staff uses. Next slide, please. And then goal 8 continues. And so this is a very edited list of the work that they've been doing, but I tried to group it into some large categories. So access controls, the desktop and support, network, central building upgrades, staffing. So you can kind of see the wide width of work that they have been working on specifically this past 4 months. It is a bit of amazing that they're all still standing, but they do great work and they are a very organized group. In the midst of all of this, they also have moved their entire department out of Central. So they've continued that work almost seamlessly. Next slide, please. And then the last goal under this key performance area is goal 14, that really focuses our attention on the interior and exterior conditions of our properties. So this is our work with county facilities, the various capital replacement projects that we do, and I've listed a few of those, and you've seen many of those contracts come through, or we've asked for closing, a few dates for closing. In addition to addressing the interior and exterior condition, county facilities has been incredibly helpful as we reopened with all the COVID-19 cleaning as well as plexiglass. And so that we continue to monitor that in buildings. Some buildings things need to be repaired because our buildings are well used, as well as does this work how we set it up originally. They were also instrumental in helping with our election office partnership with the ballot boxes. And then of course they've been instrumental to the central building upgrade. That is the end of the summation of the work we've done the past trimester on the strategic plan. Are there any questions that I can answer for you all?
Tricia, Fabian, Shepherd. Yes. When does everybody sleep?
Well, that is a great question. I just had a conversation today with somebody who said, now you are sleeping, right? So yes, it's a lot of work. We attract and hire people who are very dedicated and want to get a lot of things done. So half the time we're pulling people back and half the time we're letting them go and do all the work that you want to do. So it's an interesting balance, but they do a great job of it.
Okay, are there any more questions for Tricia? So just a little bit, maybe for new board members, but so we meet for 2 days, once every 3 months. The administrative team does with department and service level heads, where they present this trimester report in much greater detail. Each of these areas or goals that people work on have a dashboard with defining outputs and outcomes. We're able to track that through the dashboard. And if any of you have an area that you're particularly interested in, we're happy to meet with you and talk about that. But you should be assured as a library board that the funds and resources that we put are being put strictly in strategic objectives that the community have told us that are important to them, and we can demonstrate how those people and time are being put to use. Tricia, thanks. Great report. I'm going to move on quickly. I've included the 2019 annual report in this package for you to just review. We're in the process, I think Alyssa is in the process of determining whether we put out a physical copy of this or a combination of physical and digital. There are many times when we go to people and we share about the library, particularly when we're doing partnerships with this, having a physical copy is very, very useful. It's very useful for the Friends and Foundation and recruiting volunteers, and we include that content in there. And Alyssa, thanks. She told me she's planning on printing. So again, when we have guests or people coming into our facilities, particularly with fundraising efforts, this annual report is very useful, and they've started working on the 2020 report, and I should be able to have that to you sometime this year. Moving forward, the next one is an update on the Shawnee Library sign, and that is, I'll give you a moment to scroll down there. The design, the sign has been actually constructed at this point, and is going to be installed when it gets a little warmer, and the installation date is 2/19. The sign has LED lighting and is going to be primarily put, as you'll see on the front door, and you can see that on the second image below the first one. The first one is the old sign. That's going to be where it's placed first. We have 2 other locations where that sign is on that building, and that's going to be done a little later. One of the things that the county, and working with facilities, is that we realize in the county we have lots of signs on buildings, but we don't have a term and supply. So we're coordinating the bidding. We're going to go out and either bid or do an RFP so we can have this on term and supply, and each department or agency isn't having to go ahead and do that work independently. Once that is done, we will place the other 2 signs on this building, and then I think there are 4 or 5 other buildings, library buildings, that need their signs updated. This is again the work with facilities, and Abby has done working with the library, and I think we're going to increase the look of it and visibility. I think the lighting with LED lighting is going to be great as far as visibility goes, both as you're approaching the building and either from the parking lot or if you're driving by. Any questions about the sign? Okay, if there's no questions, we're going to move on to the Personnel Review Committee. The Personnel Review Committee is a committee that I go before. I can't remember the date. It's coming up, maybe in the next month. I'm going to make a request for 2 positions. The first one I'm going to talk about, which is cybersecurity professional, and we're going to be requesting that. There were 2 audits that were done in 2020. And I think at the end of 2019. One was by the county DTI, the Department of Technology and Innovation, looking at security issues. And they produced a report, which they shared with us. The second cybersecurity that was done in that same time period was done by the county auditor. And what happens is they also produced a report based on kind of steps and standards. Each report covered a different area, but what we realized that we did not have capacity with their existing IT staff, that we did have expertise, the amount of work and the way that they needed that work to be done to be in compliance required that we have an additional person that focused on that single area. And that goes everything from payment systems on credit cards that we might do, to our telephone system, to our wireless system, to our internal and external networks, anything that touches technology, even to these smart devices, so devices like Alexa or any other type of speech recognition device. Hackers are finding innovative ways to break in and infiltrate systems, and we know that county systems and municipalities are attractive targets. The second position is for a digital production manager. And this is the realization that we are going to come back and be a normal library system where people come in and sit in our chairs, use our study rooms, sit at the tables, hang out. And we're really looking forward to that day. But we don't think the demand for digital content is going away. And last time I checked that there were 20, it's been between 28 and 20 people who are watching this board meeting today. And my expectation or feeling is that people will still want to do that. They'll want to have the option to connect into a program and do that virtually as well as physically. And as part of the governance council, IT governance council for the county, we are looking at ways to do that. But primarily what we're needing is a person to help manage digital content, help our librarians produce that, and manage that production side of the business. And it's a new business kind of division for us, which is digital content. Any questions concerning that? Okay. So the PRC will look at those positions. They'll ask me the justification for them. They'll ask me how I'm planning on funding, and then they'll look at vacant positions and talk to me about how we're managing, how we're hiring, what our turnover rates, and then they'll either recommend the decisions or they will not. They'll come back with a decision on those positions. But since we're a separate taxing district and we have our own funding, we're very much like parks. And so we're kind of put into a separate category. If we can show how we're going to fund that and it's not going to put a burden on the county's general fund, and the rationale seems sound, then the Personnel Review Committee is supportive generally of our initiatives in that way. And that concludes the County Librarian's report.
Thank you, Sean. Well, that's a lot of work. Thank you all the staff for everything that you work on so much. Next, we have the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
This is Wayne. I motion that we accept the consent agenda as written.
Second? Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed. First is old business. On page 75 of your packet, we have consideration of approval of updated administrative regulation manual policies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is covering the ground that Mr. Logan covered concerning the ambiguity in language and finding finding a way to simplify and clarify around the issues of personal pronouns. The effort for us to clarify and to be more inclusive was what drove this forward. Ideally, the idea is to remove ambiguity from this and to be inclusive so that everyone can see themselves in these documents. Under the suggested motion, we've placed all the arms that are affected by this, and then below this briefing sheet are all the arms, and we've redlined where those changes have been made. I think the changes recommended are not affecting this, and really you're not really reaffirming it. What you're just doing is voting on the change of language. There is no meaningful change to what these arms are talking about, and that's why we've included them. Are there any questions concerning this this motion?
Madam Chair, Fabian Shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to suggest that any pronouns with reference to the directors on the board be changed to excellency.
Sorry.
I don't think we're going to vote on that.
Fabian, you're going to need a second for that. A bold person.
It was worth a shot.
Well, do I have a motion to approve this?
Do we need to read every arm? This is David. I'll make a motion. I move the library board approve the updated language to arms 1050-40, 10-55-11, 20-10-12, 20-10-20, 20-10-30, 20-10-50, 20-15-11, 20-20-20, 20-80-20, and 50-30-25.
Do I have a second?
I'll second. Donna.
Any more discussion?
I just feel like if our legal counsel has reviewed this, I don't know that I need to go in there and read every tiny specific thing. So thank you to Fred and Andrew for doing this work for us.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, scrolling down to page 118 of our packet, we have consideration of approval of the capital improvement plan.
Okay, so the capital improvement plan is different from the capital replacement plan in the sense of this is a 5-year plan, which is similar but focuses on the capital improvement, the buildings and those types of things. This is another situation where I go before the capital improvement plan committee, share with them the 5-year budgetary capital plan, and from this year it will be from fiscal year 2022 through the fiscal year 2026. I presented this information in December 2020 to the JCL budget committee and stepped them through that. So they've had a kind of an in-depth afternoon. Again, it's a forecasting. It's also again, to look at costing and look at other things, projections for revenue and how those costs, it's kind of a budgetary exercise. It also really captures from the retreat, the library board's priorities, and then how we are moving forward with capital projects. Are there any questions concerning this? And if there are no questions, then I would ask for a motion.
Hey, yep. Sean, if we approve this, does that mean that we are approving that Friends go into the Lackman facility, or is this just is that come later?
That comes later. And so if you'll see in your packet, it's got 2 asterisks and this being highlighted. And so we had a big debate about this. You are not approving this. Why we did that was to be fully transparent to you on the costs and to be also fully transparent to the CIP CRP committee so that they knew that this was coming. And we didn't get a situation where on the 18th we have the BOCC, I bring it forward to you in maybe March or April, and then all of a sudden the CIP committee is going, well, why did you not tell us about this, and why couldn't we have an opportunity to ask you questions? There is no, you're not affirming this, but what you're allowing me to do is go forward, share this with you, and share this really within the county's documents the way that the county wants to see this information and can be completely transparent in front of the committee, so the committee knows what is on the table. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. It's just, this is one suggestion basically at this point in time, knowing that it's 5 years out and that there can be changes to it, and then we'll get into the Lackman discussion, the next couple months or something like that. Is that the plan? Okay.
Yeah, and just remember, this might help too. At 2012, when I gave the first one, we had no funding. And so I would give a plan and it would be as if I had funding, and what I would do. And it would then go before and get approved or not, but it was a proposal. And that happens year in and year out until there is funding. But it is, at this point, it is indication of need or indication of intent. It's actually not, you don't have to have funding to do this, but it's like, this is what you think is, as far as capital plans, this is what's on the table and this is what's possible. I know that when I first started doing this, it was a little confusing, and I don't know if Joe Waters is on the line and can talk to this more, or someone from facilities, but it is just part of the process. And also it helps clarify, because we're an agency and we have this independence, it also gets all the stakeholders on the county side involved with this and aware of what we're thinking.
Okay, with that being said, do I have a motion for this?
Bethany Griffiths, I move that the Library Board of Directors approve the 2022 through 2026 Capital Improvement Plan submission.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, under new business, scroll down to page 151 in your packet, and it's consideration of memorandum of understanding between Johnson County Library and TechLogic.
Okay, so TechLogic has approached the library. They would like to do a white paper on their conveyor system that they built from us. So if you know the drive-through area, we crossed, shared space and created quite a unique solution. They would like to be able to write a white paper to do this and approached us. And we said we would like to do this, but we wanted to get a little bit more or state our expectations about, yes, you're using this for promotional, but you need to also be including us in this process. And so the memorandum of understanding, and we've worked with legal, lays out our expectations about as they go through this. We're going to have to give some staff time to them and some level of access, but I think it's a really unique solution. I'm thrilled that TechLogic recognizes that, and I think it's a way to increase visibility for the library at a national level, but it also kind of highlights what an innovative solution this was. Is there any questions concerning this one?
Okay, do we have a motion for this?
Fabian Shepherd. I move that we approve the memorandum of understanding between Johnson County Library and TechLogic Corporation regarding the automated materials handling case study.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All
Do we
opposed?
have a second for that?
I'll second.
Thank you, Bethany. Thank you, Bethany.
Somebody second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, and then lastly, the consideration of closing dates for Corinth for installation of condensers on page 154.
Again, Juan has covered this previously, but the analysis is because of how the equipment is located and because of the tight space requirements in order to get the crane or elevator and lift the equipment up. What we're asking for is permission to close for a brief piece of time, up to 3 days in early to mid-March of 2021. The exact dates contingent on the contract's delivery of equipment to allow for the replacement of the HVAC condensing units at this location.
Almost.
Any questions?
Okay, do I have a motion?
Brandy Butcher, I move that the Johnson County Board of Directors approve the temporary closure of the Corinth Library for up to 3 days in early mid-March 2021. Exact dates contingent on the contractor's delivery of equipment to allow for replacement of the HVAC condensing units.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes. All right, well, that's the last thing on the agenda. Does anybody have anything else they want to add? Okay, well, I need a motion to adjourn.
Fabian Shepard, I move that we adjourn this meeting of the library, the Johnson County Library Board of Directors.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed.
Aye.
Motion passes. Everybody try to stay warm out there.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Have a great evening.
You too.
Thanks all. Stay safe and warm.